Hey guys, this is Undercover Dudes all the way from Down Under, and today I'm going to be showing you guys the best Krunker.io settings that you can get right now. The last time I did a Krunker.io settings video was over 5 months ago, and a ton of stuff has changed in game. We've got a new settings menu, we have a ton of new settings, and my own personal settings like my field of view and my crosshair, those have been updated as well. So in this video, we're going to be walking through every single setting in Krunker.io, and I'm going to show off what I have it set to, but also some alternatives. If you're a new player, this is a perfect tutorial. If you want to know what my settings are, this is perfect as well. And also long-term plays, this is great to find out maybe some new stuff that you can go and change in your settings. But before we hop in guys, if you're going to be purchasing KR in the Krunker.io store, make sure to go and use creator code UCD. Look at it, it's already here for me. UCD, put it in that box, hit that save button, and whenever you go and purchase KR, you are directly supporting me. It's one of the best ways to support the channel. And also guys, if you haven't signed up for a Krunker.io account, if you're a new player, just started playing the game, or an older player that just didn't decide to make an account, if you haven't got one, make sure to go and click my link in the description below right here. Click that link and then go and sign up because it's one of the best ways to support the channel. When it's loaded, click the green accept button, and as you can see, it says register now to play and to support UCD. By playing Krunker, you directly support me, and it's one of the best ways to help out the channel. So with that said, let's go and choose a username. I love code UCD. I'll type in a password, try to guess it in the comments section below. Let's hit register, sign up for that account, and as you can see, I've made my Krunker account. If you want to make one, click that link in the description below and sign up right now. Make sure to tell me in the comments section below if you signed up using my link, and I'll go and heart react some comments. But with that said, let's get straight into it and show you guys those settings. Alright guys, let's get straight into it, showing off my Krunker.io settings. And hey, let's just jump straight into it with the first one right here, and that is backup settings. And you'll be thinking, okay, what is backup settings? So as you can see, I have got my custom settings already imported in game. So as you can see, I go and jump around, boom, this is my FOV, my crosshair, all of that. So if I want those settings linked to my account, what I can go and do is click that upload button, and that will go and upload the settings to my account. Alright, so to go and demonstrate this, I am in a new private browser tab, and as you can see, everything is stock standard. Let's hit accept and then hop in game, and as you can see, I have got the default settings. Well, what I can go and do is log into my account right here and then click that download button, and you will go and see that magically all my settings are now all equipped, and this is the settings that I play Krunker.io in my crosshair. Everything is all set up, which is fantastic. So keep that setting in the back of your head. I'll remind you at the end of this video if you want to go and upload your settings. Now for localization, this is pretty simple. Default region, it automatically sets depending on where you are in the world. So for me, I'm Australian, therefore I default to the Sydney server, but there is a ton of servers. For example, if you want to go and default to Singapore, etc., there is the option, but I recommend not changing it. Now for language, defaults to English, but we've got Spanish, German, Korean, and Portuguese that you can go and choose from. Now for network, it seems a bit complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. For layer compensation, just keep it on 1. That is developer recommended. The developers of Krunker.io say to keep it on 1, so I'm keeping it on 1. Now for auto routing, as you can see, it says effects ping, and we've got this little red star here. What's that mean? Well, if we scroll up, it says requires restart, so you just need to go and refresh your tab. Now for auto routing, it might go and give you better ping, it might give you worse ping. I recommend to just experiment around with it and see if it's better on or off. For me, it's better on. Now high tick rate is another new setting, and basically it increases the amount of information that you send per second to the server, and then in theory you have better registration on your shots. That is a very simplified version of it. Now by default I believe it's off, but you know what, experiment with it. If your computer and your network isn't as good, potentially keep it off, but realistically the benefits of having better hit registration are very good in this game, so I recommend to keep it on. And I also recommend keeping auto routing on just by default, but experiment around with it if you have a bit of concern. Now under experimental, we have two settings, aim freeze fix and shadow based rendering. I recommend you keep both of those off unless you absolutely need to go and use the aim freeze fix. Like if your client is lagging, if your game is lagging whenever you aim in, of course, try to go and turn it on and see if that makes a difference. But for the majority of people, you can keep that off. And shadow based rendering, I need to do a bit more experimentation with it. But for most people, maybe you don't have not so good computer, I recommend just keeping it off. Now, since we've gone through the general tab, let's actually skip over to the top bar right here and quickly talk about it. So if you go and click this little drop down menu right here, you've got default, pro, performance, and custom. So there's four templates that you can go and use. The default setting's actually not that bad. Let's go and quickly reset it to default and then hop in and have a look. And it's not too bad. It's not too bad. And then if we go to Pro right here, as you can see, these are more like, the professional players. We've got, a stretch resolution. We've got a smaller crosshair. And this is just a really, really good setting if you just want to pick up the game and play. But in my opinion, the crosshair not so nice and the stretch resolution isn't for me. Performance settings, I'm not sure if it actually gives that much of an FPS increase. I personally wouldn't go and use it. My recommendation is to make your own settings, maybe follow through with this video and go and tinker with it. But with that said, I'm going to be giving some alternatives as well for some of the settings coming later on in this video that you guys might find interesting. Now for the other buttons right here, we've got import, export, and reset. So export, let's go with that one first. You go and click that, and that will go and put all your settings into a very nice text file. And then you can open that text file and then copy paste it right into here. And that's basically the same as this backup settings, download and upload. But of course you can go and share your settings with other players. So I've just moved onto the Krunker client, which you can get by clicking the top right hand corner here and then choosing one of these installs. For the most people right here, the Windows installer will be for you. But then if I go into the settings and then scroll down in the general section, you can see there is now a client section that appears. Now in this client section, it's pretty straightforward. Unlimited FPS, keep that ticked. Make sure you can go and get as many frames per second as possible. Window capture, just keep that unticked unless you're a content creator and you want to go and muck around with OBS, just keep it unclicked. Discord RPC, that's basically a link between your game and your Discord so people can see that you're playing Krunker. I don't play on client, so it's just defaulted to off, but you can turn it on if you want. Clear cache, you can clear it if you want. Reset client settings, you can do that as well. But the main one to really focus on is just that unlimited FPS. Make sure it's ticked. By default it is, but just make sure it is. So moving on to the controls section right now, let's go and quickly look at my keybinds and then we'll move on to the settings. For movement, everything is standard. For my weapon, pretty standard as well. The only really big difference is that my primary weapon is on my thumb mouse button, so M5 right here. My melee weapon, I have that on E. And then my secondary weapon, I have it on my thumb down button. So thumb down for secondary, thumb up for primary. That's just a personal preference. The rest of the settings right here, I just keep it default. The only ones I change is just my weapon binds. All of this is the same. Tab to open up the leaderboard. All of this the same, and that's all good to go. Now for my gameplay settings, they are very straightforward. X and Y sensitivity, 1. Aim X and Y sensitivity, they are 1 as well. All 1 for my sensitivity, and it works perfectly for me, but of course go and experiment for what works with you. Now, one setting I really recommend you activate in Krunker.io right now is non-FPS sliding. Basically, Krunker had a thing where if you have low FPS and this setting turned off, that makes slide hopping really difficult. Alright guys, we've hopped in game here, and as you can see, I'm slide hopping around the map very easily, and that's because of the non-FPS sliding option. Absolutely fantastic option. You can do 180 turns like there if you can go and control your speed when you get to those really high rates, but slide hopping, an absolute dream with this setting turned on. But what happens if you go and turn it off? Or let's say what happens if you have lower FPS, because as you can see, I've got about 900 FPS right now. If I go into the frame cap right here, and then I put it on 60, which is what a lot of you guys will have if you're playing on a Chromebook or something like that, you will see that with this setting turned on, I can still slide hop, just as good as if I had 900 FPS. So FPS is not directly linked to slide hopping capability right now. You can still slide hop basically the exact same way. It is exactly the same way as if you had a really high amount of FPS. But what happens if I go and respawn and then I go and turn off this setting? So I'll go in here, I'll turn off non-FPS sliding. You need to go and respawn. It's not an instant change. So I'm just going to go and jump off this ledge right here, and you'll see a massive difference. So with this setting turned off, I don't have nearly as much grip, and it's a lot more difficult to go and slide up and also do 180s. 180s are really difficult. So if I try to go and do a 180 right here, as you can see, I slid it into here instead of going where I was aiming. So guys, make sure to go and keep that setting turned on, non-FPS sliding. Please keep it on. It will make your experience a million times better. Now, challenge mode right here is something a little bit more important to talk about. So if we go and hop in game right here, as you can see with the Trigger Man, it's the standard class in Krunker.io. He has 100 HP. However, if I go into my settings right here, I go and toggle on challenge mode, and then I'll hop into a new game and you'll see what happens to this class. Alright, so challenge mode is activated, and as you can see, I now have 50 HP, and I have a little, a little crown next to my character right here. That basically means you're in challenge mode, so you get more points per kill, more points than normal. But you also have half the amount of HP. It's a bit of a challenge. It's really good if you want to go and increase your aim, but that also means you are much more likely to go and die to your opponents. Now for invert Y-axis, that's pretty straightforward. I have it turned off. And for the controller settings, I haven't gone and customized it at all because I don't use a controller in Krunker.io. Now let's move straight into the display section, and there's quite a few things to talk about. First up, UI scale, I have it on 1. A lot of people say it's a little bit too high for their liking, so you can go and bring it down. So 0.5, as you can see, a lot less menu on your screen. You go and hop in game, a lot less information on your screen, really just focusing on the game. But I like seeing, how much HP and stuff I have, so I have it on 1. That might be a little bit too high for you guys, but you can customize it as you like. Now these next couple settings are pretty straightforward. We've got show UI, of course you want to go and have that on, and then we have use Old Scoreboard and use Old Browsers. So if we go and hop in game right here, and then we'll go and kill an opponent, what you'll go and see is that in the top right hand corner it goes and shows the kill feed, and in the bottom left hand corner it will go and have the chat. So we're going to hop in game. As you can see, I've gone and typed in chat. But if we go to the setting right here and then click use Old Scoreboard, what you'll go and see is in the top right hand corner, it will go and show the scoreboard, and then in the bottom left hand corner, the chat and the kill feed is together. Now with this, that means you can always go and see who is in your game. With the old one, what you need to do is hit tab. But I like the new setting. I wasn't a big fan of it when it first came out, but it goes and cleans things up, and you don't exactly need to see who's in your game at all times. Now this setting right here, dynamic HP bars, is actually pretty important. If we go and hop in game right here and we find an enemy, when I go and shoot that enemy, as you can see, that HP bar won't automatically go down. It will have that little, that little white period where it will go and just do, and then it will go down. So if we go and find another enemy, I can go and show it off. Alright, enemy has been found, and as you can see, there was a little white transition period for his HP bar. But if we go into the settings right here and then find another enemy, he's going to come around this corner real quick. His HP bar automatically goes down. There isn't that transition. Alright, so I've hopped into a custom game with a dummy right here because these settings are much easier to go and show off that way. And the next one to show off is show damage. So currently, if you have it on and I go and fire at the chest, as you can see, has that little 23, has that little number, that like Fortnite damage number basically. If you go obviously into the settings and then turn that off, it will not go and show any damage whenever you go and shoot your opponent. And of course that dynamic HP bars, we have now got that back on. Of course, keep it on. You want to see how much damage you're doing. You can put the scale up to whatever you want. 1.3 just seems a bit big. 1 just seems a little bit big. 0.7 is I'd say the nice little range where you can see it, but it's not too big on your screen. For show ping and show FPS, pretty straightforward. You want that on. If you go in game, as you can see, it is FPS and ping. Then we go and turn it off, and it's not there. So highly recommend you keep that on just to go and see how your performance is going. Show movement speed, Don't really recommend it. It just shows how fast you're going. It's kind of like a Quake thing. You can muck around with it if you like. There's a lot of different settings you can also go and muck around with. Nametag Display, that's something to talk about. All right, so we've hopped into a team-based mode here, and as you can see the health bar, the name, and the level of your teammates and your enemies by default. So if we go around and find an enemy right here, as you can see all of that by default. So if you go down to display and then see Nametag Display, you can just show your teammate or your enemies or just have them off. I recommend having it on everyone just so you can see everyone. But the thing you might want to go and customize is the name tag style. So by default, shows everything, but you might just want to show health only. Just show that it's, you know, teammates and enemies, so you don't see the name and you don't see the level. And that could be a good psychological thing, so you don't, you know, see a level 100 play and freak out. They're just, you know, all just normal players to you. You've got no idea what their name is. It can be a really, really cool setting, so, you know, recommend experiment with it. Profanity filter probably should have that turned on, and all of this stuff will just keep that on default. Now, Crosshair is what you guys want to know about. In my previous videos, I was using a custom Crosshair. Now I'm using like a custom but in-game Crosshair, and these are the settings if you guys want to know. Precision, I've got a green Crosshair, not too thick, 1.6, size 5, and gap 1. And as you can see, this is my crosshair. People complain that it's too big. I think it is the perfect size. I've gone through quite a few different crosshairs in my time. I started out with the default one right here, which is pretty damn ugly. Now I've got that static one that I absolutely love, but you can do layered as well. You can do a static one and then a movie one. You can do whatever you like, and you can also import images as well. You go into here, you go into image, you can go and copy and paste an image link. So this was actually my previous one. This was my previous crosshair that I quite liked, but you know, I've kind of moved on to the more square old school style, and I love it. Now for hit marker, this was actually what I was talking about before. Before it was hit indicators, a very subtle difference. But for hit markers, of course, we go and hop in game, we go and shoot an enemy, that will go and give off a little bit of a hit marker, Call of Duty style, you know, the old classic. Next up, we have the render tab, and this is all about performance. Now for resolution, I don't recommend you have it on 2. I just have a relatively good PC, but for the majority, 99.9% of people out there, put it on 1. If you have a not so good PC, if you're lagging a little bit, if you're on a Chromebook, put it on a little bit lower. So if we go in game, 0.3 is generally the lowest I would go for resolution. As you can see, it looks really blurry and blocky and not so nice, but it gives you extra frames. So it is worth it if your computer isn't so good, but for the majority of people out there, put it on 1. If you have a really good computer, put it on 2. It makes things just a little bit extra sharper, which is nice for the YouTube videos. Now for aspect ratio, for 99% of people out there, just keep it on default. Just keep it on the preset one, which is the resolution of your monitor. So for me, 2560 by 1440. A lot of you people out there, 1920 by 1080, 1280 by 720. Those resolutions, I wouldn't really muck around with it. But what you can go and do is experiment with stretch resolution. So as you can see, this resolution right here is 1440 by 1080. This stretches things out a little bit. It gives you know, a bit more of an old school Counter-Strike look. Majority of people, I would recommend keep it just on native, just on the normal resolution, and you'll be fine. But some people like that stretched look. Now for these settings right here, let's keep it really simple. Anti-aliasing, just keep it off. You know, in general, it's going to go and soak up a little bit more performance, but it makes your game look quite nice. Post-processing, that will make your game look a little bit nicer, but not too much on the performance side. Low spec, this is actually quite interesting. With low spec, what it will go and do is not show the waist and below of your opponent. So it won't go and show the legs. You might be thinking, isn't that a bad thing? Well, no, because they will still be there. The hitboxes are still there. You just won't see it. So your aim will naturally gravitate up towards the chest and the arms and the head. So this can actually be quite good if you want to train your aim to go for higher shots rather than lower shots. Now for no textures, this is really if you have a not so good PC, it just wipes out all the textures in the game, and I'll go and show you what I mean. Alright, so I've turned the setting off, and as you can see, all the textures have just been wiped off the map. It looks very simple, very basic, but I do actually get a bit of an FPS increase, about 100 or so frames per second. So if your computer is really not good at handling Krunker.io, this is an option that, as you can see, doesn't look too good. Turning map details off, it gives even less detail to the game. So it really is just a blank canvas. You just kind of just focus on your opponent. So it is a very drastic option. If your computer isn't good, I would highly recommend try to play the game with no textures off and map details on, and then see a little bit later on. Now for particle distance right here, I've got it set on the default 290. That means I won't see particles outside 290 units. That really doesn't matter that much. There isn't too many particles in this game, so I'll just leave that as B. For render distance, that means a little bit more, not so much in pubs because the public matches are very close range maps, but on more custom maps, if there's like 60 or so people, if it's really hogging your system, go and pull that down and you'll see less people at further ranges and really only the people at closer ranges. And that will obviously be not so good if you want to snipe some people really far away, but if your computer's not handling it, that is an option. Now for shadows, I just recommend just with the normal default shadows. I think they look really nice. Soft shadows, high res, you can muck around with that. Dynamic, you can muck around with that as well. And all of this stuff, this is just extra little options, bells and whistles that go and make your game look a little bit nicer or a little bit worse. But by default, all of these are very standard and very nice. Bullet trails, that's when you go and fire a sniper rifle and it will go and show that little, that little trail through the air. There's also a sniper flap option. So if I go and hop in game, as you can see, there is the sniper flap, but if I go and turn it off, it doesn't automatically. A lot of these settings, you have to go and respawn once. So as you can see, the sniper flap is still there, but if I go and die and then go and hop back in, as you'll go and see, the sniper flap isn't there. Oh, it's magically disappeared. For some mods, that is important. For texture animations, again, something a little bit important. If you're using, let's say, this Zomvox right here has this animation, you have that setting turned off and that will go away. Saturation in-game, saturation UI, this is all up to personal preference. My monitor is a lot more saturated than my old monitor. Previously, I had it at 1.8, and as you can see, everything is very colorful. But my monitor is already really vibrant with the colors. So I brought it down to 1.2, but for the UI, I kept it on 1.8. Now for color hue, this is just the random option where you can go and change the hue of the game. You can turn stuff green or blue or red or whatever. Don't really recommend really mucking around with that. Kill feed limit. Something trick shotters and feeders and stuff like that would really appreciate. So you can go and set on 8, 7, 6, whatever. So obviously if you want to go and get those montage moments, you want to put it as high as possible, default is 8. Now this one right here is actually really important. It's called bullet traces. So if I go and pull out my pistol right here and I go and fire, as you can go and see, there is some traces, and you think with a pistol it's not going to be that much, and with a sniper it might be a little bit distracting. That's the sniper trail that we're talking about before. But if we swap to the trigger man right here and we start firing, as you can see, the traces actually kind of block your screen a little bit. Frosty Wolf gave me this tip to go and disable it. Even though it looks really cool, I recommend turning it off and play a few games with it, and you'll be able to track a lot better. Just rely on your crosshair, not the traces. Go and aim at people's heads. There won't be that visual clutter in your face. I think you will really appreciate it. Now moving on to the game section, this is one of the most important parts of the settings, so please take note. Now for gameplay privacy, we've got streamer mode and anonymous mode. Now for anonymous mode, it's only for verified players like me. So if I go and hop in game and hit tab, as you can see, it says anonymous 1, but if I go and turn it off, it will go and say UCD whenever I go and respawn. So we've hopped in here, and as you can see, it says UCD law now instead of anonymous. I like having anonymous mode on so people don't go and stream snipe me every time and just sweat every time I hop into a lobby. I just want to play Krunker.io sometimes. But with that said, let's go back up to streamer mode right here. It says streamer mode, but it's basically just goes and bans bad names, basically. So it has potentially a name that might get past the filter or something like that. You can go and turn this on, and it will just go and randomize. It will go and scramble names. So as you can see, my name was UCD. Now it's CUD. So it's gone and randomized up the letters, and that's actually quite nice if people potentially might have inappropriate names. So parents, that is an option for you. We'll go back in here just to go and show it. Streamer mode, go and turn that on if you don't want your kids seeing any names. Now for field of view, this is very, very important. Always debated, what's the best field of view? What's the best, weapon field of view and stuff like that. A lot of people have said nowadays that lower FOVs are better, and I agree. I've always said that lower FOVs are better. So by default, it's on 60, right? And as you can see, you see nothing. It's very, very tunnel vision. That's actually very, very good for accuracy. So if you're playing a corridor shooter, or Call of Duty and stuff like that, you don't really need to see people behind you and stuff like that. But in Krunker, you're slide hopping around the map. You want a slightly higher FOV, but you don't want it too high. So the maximum before, I believe, was 125 and stuff like that. And as you can see, you could just see everything. You can see people going down here and down here. But it's also a bit more difficult to aim because the characters will be a little bit squishier rather than pulled out on the lower FOV. So it's all a visual thing. The hitboxes are going to be the same, but visually, it's going to be a little bit better if you have lower FOV. All right, so I've got my trusty sidekick here, and on this high FOV 125, see how very thin he is. And if we go out to the sides, that's what happens when you have high FOVs. You get this effect called warping. You'll see on the right hand side now. See how the character warps the further it is on the side of your screen? This can be very, very distracting. You get to see more of your map, but it's only really when he's in the center of the map that it really makes it a lot better for you to go and aim. So high FOVs, I don't necessarily recommend them. 125, I think, is already too high. You can now go up to 150, and this is absolutely insane. So see how far away he looks? And then you turn here and see how close he looks. So it's very, very disorientating. Now, a lot of people recommend 90 FOV. I think 90 FOV is really good. See how you get very, very minimal warping. Basically next to no warping here, making it really easy to go and shoot people and also go and slide hop. Alright, so I've got my friend back in here, and I play on 100 FOV. It gives a little bit less accuracy, but I also get to see a little bit more. I can see to the left here and the right here very, very nicely. When on 90 FOV, I wouldn't. All up to personal preference. I say around the 90 to 100 zone is good. Now for weapon FOV, this is purely visual. I put it on 150, I got spaghetti arms. If you go and put it on 60, you've got like Call of Duty, console type vibes right here. I personally, I think I had it around 105. I think that's a good zone, 105, 110. Makes your gun look a little bit cooler, a little bit more out, but it isn't really that, that thick gun really close to your body that's quite disorientating. Now for weapon bobbing, I've got it on 0.6. That means how much the gun goes and bobs whenever you go and jump around and slide hop. Of course, you can go and put it on 0. I think that's what Moswe has, and as you can see, it just stays around. Your gun doesn't move at all. I find that a little bit boring, but of course you could go and put it on 3 and your gun just goes and bobs a crazy amount, especially while slide hopping. A little bit crazy, very distracting, but could be a cool option if you want some cool clips. So with that said, I have it on 0.6, I believe, and that works good for me. Now weapon leaning is basically how far your gun goes and leans left and right while you move. So as you can see, the barrel of the gun, the top barrel of the gun does not move when I move my crosshair whenever I go and move my mouse. But if we go weapon leaning, let's put it on 6 for extreme effect. As you can see, the gun goes and moves a little bit. It leans into your shot. Very weird effect. I don't know anybody that goes and uses it, but I suppose it's there if you want. Here's a new setting I don't even know about, weapon rotation. Let's go and have a look. So you could rotate your weapon. Okay, that's actually pretty cool. So you can give it a little bit of an angle instead of it being dead on. You can go and rotate it -1. You got that really cool, side style Rainbow Six Siege look. Actually, not too bad of a setting. Maybe a little bit of 0.2 rotation, give it a little bit of a cool look. So maybe we'll muck around with that later on. Jokes aside though, your offset's very important. I got mine set at 1.5. That's basically how far left or right you want it. So if you put it on 2, it's very far right. You put it on all the way left, and that will go dead in the center, Quake style. Not particularly a fan of this one, but I know a few people that use. I think Feels Good Man puts it like kind of in the center, but personally I like it over to the right hand side. Y, the same thing, up or down, and Z is basically in or out. So we put it in 2 and you get the spaghetti arms. You put it on 1, you just get the normal one. And obviously if you put it on 0, your gun's basically inside you like a turret. So with that said, very straightforward. I don't have anything revolutionary here. Weapon ADS Y offset. That's something to go and talk about very, very quickly. I'll quickly go down here and turn off this option, hide weapon on ADS. We'll come back to that later, but as you can see, we can ADS in now, and my crosshair is not exactly in line with my sight. And there's a reason for that. It was because of that previous setting I talked about before, ADS Y offset. If you put it on 1, as you can see, crosshair dead in line with the sight. But what you can also go and do is muck around with a little bit and put it, oh, that's Y offset, my bad. We'll put that back where it's supposed to, but you can put it on 2, and that really just gets the gun barrel out of your sight. And this can work really well on stuff like pistols, where you don't want to be actually looking down the gun because it's going to be blocking the opponent's head. And this works really well on stuff like the deagle. Now for me, I don't actually like looking at my weapon while I'm ADSing. That's why I had that setting on before, and that was hide weapon on ADS. So if I can turn that back on again, my weapon just goes away when I ADS. So as you can see, we've got that same effect here. There's a new setting in game now. It's called left-handed. Put your gun on left-handed, requires a respawn. So we'll just go and quickly die to go and show that one off. If you want the left-handed look, you can have the left-handed look. I'm a left-handed gamer, but I play right-handed, so it doesn't really feel that good to me, but we'll go and turn that off. And there's another thing called ADS FOV Power, another really, new setting. Let's go and show that off really quickly. So on 1, as you can see, we're going ADS, and your field of view goes and moves in. Your FOV actually reduces when you scope in, which makes sense because you want a bit more accuracy. But what you can go and do is reduce that power to 0.2, and you won't go and move in as much. You'll move in just a little bit instead of a lot. This can have a very, very cool effect. This can have a cool effect. By default, you scope in, you want the accuracy boost, right? Because when you scope in, your bullets are tighter, you can control the recoil better and all that. You don't have this insane amount of spread, but sometimes you don't want to go so in. So a lot of people have been putting this on the lowest possible, which is 0.2. So you still get to see really, really wide vision, but also you get the accuracy benefits of scoping in with your weapon. Weapon aim animation, this is quickly one to talk about. So if we're going to turn it off, as you can see, it's just like that, right? Your gun just goes in a little bit. You don't actually go in scope in, which is, a cool option if you have it like this. But for me, because I have a hide weapon or ADS on, it just makes the gun disappear and it looks very, very awkward. So that's a little bit of a combo to muck around with. 0.2 here, weapon aim animation off, and then hide weapon on ADS off. And as you can see, just goes in a little bit, but you still get that insane accuracy while being able to see everything. Very, very cool. This stuff is all self-explanatory. Let's not talk about it. Load mods, again, self-explanatory. If you have it on, you can load mods. You can go into the mod section right here, and then you can go and equip all your favorite mods and stuff like that. The Frosty Wolf mod, the Strems mod, etc. And then we go and scroll down here. Again, a ton more options that we could go into, but are not really necessary. Scope borders is one to talk about though. All right, so I've got my sniper rifle right here. I go and scope in, and I've got a custom scope, which will show off later. But if we go into the settings right here, we go to game, and then we go over to the scope borders. And by default, this is on, and you'll see why this is bad, because you have this black box around you. Black box around your scope, it just looks ugly. And if you get rid of the custom scope image, I'll have this in a link inscription below if you want it, and you have the scope borders on, as you can see, you've got this black bar around you. You can't see to your left and right. You're putting yourself at a disadvantage, my friends. The first thing that you should do when you get into Krunker.io is get rid of these scope borders. Get a custom scope, link in the description below to mine. Turn this off, and as you can see, this is better, obviously, but this is still not a transparent scope. You want a transparent scope, turn that off, you'll see everything. It will make everything nice and easy for you. You get to see lots of vision. All right, so this stuff is pretty self-explanatory. We've got Reticle image, which is basically, if you go into the Reticle section on like the AK-47, the SMG, they have these reflex sights. As you can see, you can do a custom one, so you can specify a custom image right here. Red dot, green dot, spread, blah, blah, blah. These are all the ones built into the game, but you can go and put your own image if you like, and that will go and show up on your AK-47 when you ADS. So that's something a little bit cool to muck around with. You can also go and do width and height and stuff like that. So we're going game right now. As you can see, that little dot goes and appears in the center of your screen. That's something you can muck around with. For match end, it's just something that happens at the end of the game. Ammo, icons, def icons, all of this is really customizable, and there is many tutorials on YouTube that you can look into if you really want to customize your game visually. But I'm really just, for this tutorial, I'm just talking about like the crosshair, the scope, FOV, stuff like that, the core stuff, the actual extra visual elements like a damage overlay and stuff like that. I currently have that off. So if you have that on and you get shot, there'll be like a bit of a red tinge around your screen. That can be good when you first start playing, but eventually it actually just goes and inhibits your vision. So I personally have it off. Now for sound, the master volume is way too high when you first get into Krunker, so I put that all the way down to 0.2, and stuff like this is just, you know, whatever your personal preference. I don't like talking to people in games, so I have that on 0. And that, my friends, is my custom Krunker.io settings. If you've been following along with me, make sure to go and hit the upload button so it's linked to your account. Now, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to go and smash that like button right now and comment in the comment section below. What was your favorite part? Did you find anything that was super interesting that you changed your settings and all that? Tell me in the comment section below. But with that said, this is Undercover Dudes, all the way from Down Under, out.